welcome to the Vermeer HGD Legacy video, and I'm really happy to be here today with friends and colleagues that have been with this business for a long time and are a very important part of the story. And I think it could be argued that the HGD line is probably our most important product line in the company's history. I mean, they're all important, but this has made a significant mark on the company. So I'm really interested, and Mary, maybe I can start with you. So I believe at the time of the drills coming out, you know, it was the business was transitioning from generation 1 to generation 2 leadership. So I'm really curious to hear from a family perspective, you, Bob and Gary, the why, what you talked about, and really what got the program going.
Well, I remember in late 80s, I think it was 89, John Haas came to us from Hammerhead and had the idea of a pneumatic mole, so piercing tool, and but he needed some funding. And my dad thought it sounded very interesting. In fact, he said, you know, I've always thought there should be some kind of a tool that's like the animal mole that can literally, you know, bring infrastructure in the ground without having to open cut it. And so that was kind of the start of our underground tools. By the way, first it was called Easy Bore.
Okay.
And then, as I understand it, Chris Steinlegge, who was our dealer out in Oregon, said, oh, you ought to call it Navigator. That stuck.
Yeah, much better name.
Yeah,
Rolls off the tongue better.
Yeah, and again, my dad said, you know, I always thought there should be a better way to put in utilities. He wasn't that involved at all in the design or anything, but he was very interested in it. And again, we had a few dealers who were already starting to sell it, and that does push us to think about the product lines.
Yep. Pressure was on.
Yeah.
It was go. That makes sense. Very good. So, Jim, you were part of the engineering group, right?
Yes.
On these early days. So,
Yes.
Tell me about your first recollection. Like, how did you get involved? What did Pat come and say to engineering, and where did it go from there?
He pulled me in the office one day and he says, what do you know about directional drilling? I said, absolutely nothing. I don't know what you're talking about. And he says, well, I know nothing about it either, but the family says we're going to do it. I said, okay. I said, well, what do you want me to do? And he says, well, I want you to go to the Carolinas and watch unit run. So there's a brick wall, I'll go tear it down for you. So I went out there, came back, it was a 140-foot shot. It took us 2 days to do it. And it was going underneath the entrance into the emergency room to a hospital. And he says, well, what do you think? I says, I don't want anything to do with it. He says, well, I don't either, but we're gonna do it. And that's kind of how it all started.
So let's talk about maybe the first couple of years. So now we're in the market, you've got a machine, there's a couple of competitors out there, Vermeer's in the game. So what happened next?
A lot of manual labor. Because we were carrying the rod out, we had to push the rack out through the grader ditches to set up. We were pounding stakes in with a sledgehammer, and it was just extreme amount of manual labor. And it wasn't a real popular way to install yet. It was more open cut. It was seen as extremely expensive. So we started digging in, trying to reduce that. The interesting thing about it was those first 2 or 3 years, there was another gentleman, Pete Rosendahl, and I were really involved with it. And we were kind of the design team, product support team, and the service team. So we would go out, take a machine and go out and bore, and then we would come back saying, oh, that was a lot of work, let's change this. So then we'd sit down and start trying to be innovative to make it more practical and easier to do. So.
Yep. So some of the early innovations came from the fact that you were doing the work. Now, was that part of the strategy, or was it because you just didn't have enough people?
It was all by accident, I think. We didn't have the people to do it. And it was interesting what Mary says. You know, Pat wanted to have 5 machines, and I wrote the bill of material for the first Navigator, or first Easy Bore, and I went in and asked Pat, I said, what do you want me to price purchase items at? And he said to me, he says, Jim, he says, price it at 10. If we sell 6 of these a year, I'll be pleased as punch. That's how negative he was about the whole project. So,
In fact, I remember one of his comments in one of the board minutes was that it's still unclear about what this market is all about. So yeah, it was really true. And it was a lot, but it did work.
It did work.
And I think my dad probably said this, you know, go look at what's out there and then make it better.
Yeah.
And to have one of the first, I think we had the first self-contained unit
Yes,
in '93.
Yeah.
And sales went up, I mean, astronomically. We went up 400% the second year and another 100% the year after that. And of course, by the end of the '90s, it was half of our business. Half.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So tell us about that, Mary. You just talked about it, but we had umbilical machines. We had something that was, you know, taken based on, you know, what competitors doing, what contractors were telling us, but we moved into self-contained. How did that evolve, and then why did it take off? You know, Mary said it just really started to skyrocket.
Again, it goes back to Gary Nearich was involved with it. And he brought a customer and he says, I want a small drill, curb to house, that I can sit on and just drill. So we came up with a D4, which was a Kohler powered 25 horse drill with 6-foot rod. And that's kind of how the self-contained started. And so the next step was we went to what was popular then, a D24 trailer mount, and made the 2440 self-contained unit.
So that didn't come from you and Pete out there drilling, that came from customer.
The best information comes from the customer.
So Ed, tell us about your entry into the HDD program and what your first job was and some of your early experiences.
So I got in the HDD part of it probably about 1990 as a product specialist, and that involved a lot of the training and startups, you know, around the world, because we didn't have a big knowledge base out there at that time. So we started getting more overseas, and trying to train at the time was Vermint, was our Holland-based office. So we helped them to train those guys, but also going out to the different countries with them. You know, you look back now, it's like it's amazing we got done what we did. And you kind of related to where we're at now with the solar, you know, it's in its infancy. But we'll look back in 10 years and think, holy cow, this has changed a lot.
So Jason, I'm curious, so you obviously weren't in the business, you were a young man back then, but what are some of your early memories from HDD and maybe the stories you heard?
I just remember this sense that things were improving very quickly when it came to HDD, that we knew we'd started out with something fairly rudimentary, but every year we were developing new exciting ideas and implementing that, and it's remarkable for me to sit here now and think about how much we've continued to innovate over the last 18 years. I remember coming in 2005 and sort of feeling like, you know, hey, HDD's come a long ways, fairly mature technology, not even close.
Yep, very good. How about Gary? Like, as this thing really took off, as you got in the later 90s, Mary, you know, what was he thinking about that? Was he involved?
He wasn't involved on a day-to-day basis at all, but he was very supportive. He loved innovation, and just hearing the stories again from Ed and Jim, I mean, we have an innovative culture here, and constantly looking about how can we make it better for the customer. And listening to the customer. And I mean, the amount of innovation in that first 10 years was incredible.
I can remember your dad coming in, he's so innovative, and he was excited about it.
I am very, very happy that Gary, Bob, and Mary were supportive of it. Yeah, I'm glad these guys were able to, and all of you were able to see the long-term future that is involved in HDD and pursue it, because Vermeer would be a different company, and our dealers would be different companies, and we would be serving a lot fewer customers if we had not gotten into HDD.
Maybe talk a little bit about the future, and we'll maybe kind of let you share some of your thinking. So, you know, we've been in this market for, 30 years, right? Where's it going? What kind of innovation is yet to be developed in this space?
I think the main challenge that our customers are faced now is labor. It's enough people to be able to do the job and run the equipment. And so I think training continues to be a part of that, and there's different ways that we're focusing on training than maybe compared to the past. But it's really designing equipment that can be as productive as possible and figuring out ways to decrease that learning curve, to put an operator on a piece of equipment and get them up to par, and looking to the future to see what we can do there to reduce the amount of effort that's required to complete a job.
I think we have been intentional about having innovative, quality, safe products for our customers.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. It's not easy. Some of those challenges have been huge.
You know, have been fortunate to be with the product line probably since '96 or '7. So, seen a lot of the evolution and tremendous, work by so many people to make that happen. And probably similar, Mary, to what you said, what's really a huge blessing is going around the world and just seeing the technology, how it's evolved, and the impact it makes. Spent a lot of time in China, seeing the drills, Vermeer drills putting in infrastructure for the first time in China, all the way through the building out of just broadband and electric around the world. So just so fun that, here in Pella, Iowa, where the technology, was really born for Vermeer, and just to see it grow, and the future is bright. And we're just very fortunate that this product line will continue to make an impact around the world. So just want to thank everybody for their time, wonderful stories. Thank you all for being part of the HDD story too.